Hello, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions about media and production 24/7. If you're watching on YouTube, you can always enter your questions for the show using a QR code that you'll see pop up occasionally, or just going to askofficehours.global. In our second hour today, we're going to break down our NAB 24 efforts from the field. A lot of the field team are joining us today. It was an exciting adventure in Las Vegas over the course of the last week, and we'll be breaking it down today, so stay tuned. That's our second hour, but right now it's time for your questions. So let's dive in. What do we have today, Alexander?
First question this morning is from Sean Johnson in New York. Besides the X32, what other audio mixers with a built-in auto mix? Anything announced at NAB? Thanks.
We're going to start with Ronny Hofsøy in Tromsø, Norway today. Ronny?
I don't think there was many new mixers that did this at NAB, but all in the panel and a few older viewers know that I'm fond of the Allen & Heath series. Just beware that the biggest ones does not include auto mixing. So if you stay under the Avantis line and down to SQ and the smaller ones, they have a really good working auto mixer that we are very, very appreciative with. So we liked it.
Going to Courtney. Courtney.
Well, I was looking at the Zoom website because Zoom, the F6, is a fairly inexpensive 6-input recorder and mixer, and it does have an auto mix built in, so as well as ambient, multi-track recording. So I was looking to see their new Essential line. They introduced the H6, the H line, to see if they had auto mix. I don't see anything about it in the specs, so I don't know if it does it. But I think the H6 the F6 and the F8N from Zoom Audio both contain auto mix for their inputs.
We're going to Jonas in Germany. Jonas?
I actually found two things that could be applicable for on-site as well. It's two software mixers. One of them is OnHertz Aristo, which, calling it a mixer really isn't doing it justice. It's a really great audio platform and engine that Alex would love it. You build all your little nodes, and then you have a nodal interface where you can route all your audio stuff.
I met with them. It may be the core of what we're doing next. Yeah, it's amazing.
It's amazing. And then they have an auto mixer, so you can put any signals in there, but then they have this awesome thing called the flex mixer, where literally you say, hey, I would like a simple channel and 2 advanced channels, and advanced gets you EQs, and it builds out the nodal interface for you. And the greatest thing is it's all web-based and embeddable, and we have it running in the cloud, and it's amazing. The other thing that also was released-ish was Llama Audio's Mix and Llama Audio's auto mix. I forgot how they are called. We met with them. And the cool thing about that is it's already being used by Eurosport and big networks, and it's really built for commentators and balancing commentators with a world feed. So depending on your use case, that might also work. Both of those are audio engines that work well in the cloud as well, and you can also bring down to the cloud, to the ground.
And up to Canada for Alexander.
Yeah, there's too many mixers to mention, but a lot of the major manufacturers, even in their entry-level stuff, they have auto mix, like the Allen Heath SQ series and above, and the Yamaha TF series, and the Midas M32s, and the X32s, like you mentioned there. The one that I use, which is, I consider an affordable one, is this one. This is the Soundcraft UI24R, and similar to the cheaper Behringer X Air, you get auto mix, and you get 2 groups of 8 that you can assign as well. And that's a really good sounding mixer with auto mix, and it has a nice web interface, which is super easy to use, and you can have up to 10 simultaneous users using it. So that's what I use. That's what's been working for me. But like I said, lots of options out there.
Sean, hope that helped you. Let's move to our next question.
Our next question comes from Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York. Morning, everyone. Mix Effect 2.1.0 with the use of USB/external webcams is coming soon. Could we get Adam on for a second hour in the near future?
Alex.
Adam, if you're listening, you're invited. so we'd love to have you. So, I mean, we'd love to have Adam anytime he has something new. We're really excited. Mix Effect Pro, if you don't know it, is probably adds 10x to the value of your ATEM. You know, you have to have it. If you're buying an ATEM, just assume it's $50 more and get Mix Effect Pro and add it to it. It's a must-have application. So anyway, if Adam's got new stuff to look at, we'd love to have him on to show it. I think about most of this panel, or many people in office hours, all have Mix Effect Pro. So it's really, really powerful.
Let's go to the next question.
Andy Kirkendorfer in Vieira, Florida asks, anyone see the massive 135-inch Asus ProArt Cinema PQ07 monitor in person? Thoughts?
Alex, did you get a look at it?
I didn't. But what I did, I will say that as you get to that size of screen, the problem we start getting into is audio. So once you get over a 10-foot diagonal screen, you have to remember that you're putting, you typically and I'm primarily talking about surround. So if you're going to get a 135-inch monitor, you should probably have surround sound. And so the problem you get yourself into is that typically those speakers, you have a TV, and I just got in late last night. You have your TV, and you typically have your right, left, and then you'll have your center, in here. As the screen gets bigger, it covers where those would be. And so it starts spreading all of those out, and it actually becomes a reflective surface. Now, in large theaters, Courtney and I went to see the Samsung screens that are in theaters. They're actually taking the screen and bouncing audio off of it to the listener with varying levels of success. But that becomes a challenge on these screens unless you're listening to it on your headphones or something like that. But I also can't imagine what it costs. My guess, 18 to 25,000 is probably what I would guess. And if they're doing less than that, then they're doing a great job. so we hope that that's what they're doing. Really excited about it though. But I think that I look at 98 as kind of the largest that I would buy before I started thinking about screens, like projection screens.
Courtney, you want to weigh in?
I was just looking at the specs on this thing. I haven't seen it in person yet, but it's for that size of a screen, 135 inches. It's 4K micro LED, and it has 2,000 nits peak brightness, so it can definitely give you HDR, and you might have to wear your sunglasses if you're indoors in a dark room.
It's a display. It's
the only thing I'll say,
booth.
I had a conversation with Dolby about that, and they did point out that they showed a picture of they were measuring things in the real world. And we think of screens as being really bright, but they are measuring things in the real world. And one of the things that they showed was like a wall on a sunny day in shade is 9,000 nits, like 9,000. Like it is. So it is. Our eyes. The what really gets us in trouble is when there's a lot of area around what we see that's dark. Because our eyes will then open up because the general is there, and then that really becomes problematic. But if all of what you see, when 135 inches, that might be all you see, it tends to have less of an impact on your eyes.
Let's move to the next question.
Next one's from Douglas Carmichael. I like the idea of the Zoom box. Who do you think would use it? Would it mostly be those using non-Mac production software like vMix, or those with hardware-based workflows, GV/ROS et al.?
And Jonas is going to tackle this one. Jonas?
Well, it's funny that you say GV and ROS, because the first thing that I think when I hear them is GV AMP, which is the cloud-based software switcher working with NDI. And ROS now also released ROS Carbonite Code, which is a NDI-based software switcher. But I think it's not only for switches, it's also for remote contribution. Like if you look at what we did with office hours, like a while ago, it would have took a whole lot more processing, like specialized hardware. We just brought a Mac Mini there and a Sony Decklink quad, and oops, there we have it. Like 4 cameras uplinked with less than 250 milliseconds. Automatic scaling and bandwidth savements, depending on what we do. We even saw higher than 6 Mbits of usage, like truly awesome. Plus audio that is synced the Zoom room encoded all 4 streams together, so it stays pretty much in sync. I think it's not only for switches, but also for remote contribution, really interesting. So yeah, I wouldn't say that it's like just for hardware or something like that, but also we even install it on like old Wowza Clearcasters that have like put a 4-channel DeckLink card into it, and now you have a really great and awesome contribution box. Yeah.
Alex?
Yeah, the Pro AV worked really, really well over this last week. And I think that, again, as Jonas said, a Mac Mini, not even it's a basic Mac Mini with a Duo card was enough to take in the inputs that we needed. So I do think that high density boxes will make a difference. I think that I can see opportunities where we'd want to bring in or export a lot of feeds, but it doesn't take very much right now to get a lot of feeds in and out of Zoom.
Let's go to the next question.
Next question is a QR code. Marielle, Shusha, Miera, and Wablo asks, this show definitely shows that all live concert, corporate, and industry events are going away very soon because people just want remote. Is it worth it to join We Tour Connect to help get more work after graduate? And there's a link to wetourconnect.com.
Alex is going to start us off. Alex?
I don't think all of these events are going anywhere. So I just want to make sure. I think sometimes I talk about the fact that we need to include people, but I don't think that we're going to stop wanting to go to concerts or stop. There's definitely a value in doing things in a physical world. I mean, there are, I was, walking through NAB and ran into Emery Wells, and got to talk to him a little bit about the new Frame.io, which I'm really excited about, and there's a lot of, just these happenstance things that do happen, and I don't want to undermine those things. What a lot of times when we're talking about it here, what we're focused on is how do we really serve the 5 nines, the 99.999% of the world's population that'll never get to see the event. So we want to find ways that make it more available to them. How do we get them more connected? But we not only do I not think that these events will go away, but I don't want them to go away. I think that NAB is very valuable. It's easier for us to cover if everyone shows up in somewhere. so I think I just want to kind of underline that. I'm not as familiar with We Tour Connect, but to talk to the earlier part of the statement, I do think that online events will become bigger and bigger and bigger as the technology continues to grow. And I think that Zoom is a big piece of that, primarily because they have a liminal team that is moving a lot of this down the path and building the broadcast tools that we need to do these online events. But I don't think that the physical events. I'm looking forward to the next. We're going to go down and do a much simpler show at Cinegear, and I want to go to a place where I can touch all the gear, and I can pick it up and I can talk to people about it. But we also need to find ways that we can include other people online.
And I believe, Ronnie Hofsoy. Courtney is next. Sorry.
Thanks, Bill. I took a look at their website, and We Tour Connect, I don't know if it's going to be the solution to your problem of less and less shows, live events happening, because We Tour Connect seems to be an organization that puts together or lists people who are going out on tour and traveling with traveling shows that like a traveling operas like Tlaloc Lopez Waterman, who is sometimes here on our panel does traveling lighting on operas all over the country. So it's a collection of a place and a job board that post traveling shows that are traveling, and so individuals that work on those traveling shows can find their next job on it. But not necessarily, I don't see anything on that website about remote operation of those live touring shows. It's mainly a collection of people who do live tours, providing audio, video, or lighting for those kind of shows. So, and also the unions do have touring classes of touring cards. If you're in the Stagehands Union and it is a union traveling show, you can get a touring card and travel with that from place to place and not be offending any of the local unions that are in the cities that they're landing at.
Ronnie.
I think I'm a little bit too old to talk as if I'm graduated this year, but let's pretend I did. The first thing I would do is, of course, to join or find companies that are doing these types of virtual productions that we are doing here in office hours. And I would really push you in the direction of learning all the new technologies. We talked about Tlaloc and the production they are setting up, but just ask Tlaloc how many new technologies he has had to learn the last 3 or 4 years, and getting into this touring industry or the production industry or the event industry, it takes a lot of knowledge, and a lot of different tools are being applied. And there are new tools coming onto our desk each day, and just to be able to navigate and start learning all those, it's a big future. And we are always looking at young people that are actually knowing how to find out of all these new technologies that we are so depending on in the future. So start learning and do some job in the local theater or wherever you would like to work on your free time as well.
Let's head off to the next question.
Another QR code question from Lou Perez in Santan Valley, Arizona. Upgraded Stream Deck on Windows to version 6.6.0. Now functions like my mute button have a significant delay. Anyone else experiencing this?
Adrian Watkins is going to try to help you out. Adrian?
Hey Lou, I upgraded about 2 days ago. So far I haven't seen any problems, and I have some quite complex macros with the Stream Deck that have delays built into them, some that don't. I guess it also depends on what mute function you're using. I'm using Stream Deck to mute Zoom Mute here, and no hassles at all. Maybe a reboot if you haven't already rebooted since you installed it. I don't know if there was any DLLs locked up in that process, but that could be a good place to start.
And let's go to the next question.
Tlaloc Lopez Waterman in San Jose, California asks, how do you feel about NAS versus directly USB connected RAID storage options? What are the pros and cons? Do you take read-write speed hit on a NAS versus Thunderbolt?
And Jason's going to start us out. Jason Beisch.
You definitely take a read-write hit. Just to give you an idea, and theoretically, if you could get a NAS that is at perfect 10 gigabits per second, a 10 gigabyte file would take about 3.6 seconds. That is significantly slower than modern SSDs, and anytime you have a modern SSD that's rated, you can pretty much saturate, I wouldn't say Thunderbolt 3, but very, very close. So the short answer is absolutely. You're going to take a hit, and it's really just a matter of utility and raw speed versus functionality and, cross-network stuff.
Courtney.
Yeah, I have backup scripts written for both my RAID, which is only on a 1 gigabit network, and my NVMe drive, which is plugged in over USB 3.1. And the NVMe drive beats it by about 10 to 1, like Jason was saying. So, yeah, it's a lot faster doing exactly the same backups over the USB connected drive, unless you've got 10 gigabit Ethernet everywhere.
Adrian.
Yeah, if you want the best of both worlds, QNAP do a NAS which has both Thunderbolt and 10 gig. I've got one packed over the back there, so if I'm bringing home a big load of work, then I'll plug it in directly to the Mac, suck it straight up through Thunderbolt. Otherwise, it's fine for everybody to access over the wire.
And Jonas.
If you don't use anything that uses like network storage, I don't think there's a big advantage to go with NAS. Like you have to pay the price to also include networking and fast enough networking there. But especially if you want to do any of the cool new workflows that were released from BMD at NAB with like replay and automatic uploads, probably also coming to the ATEM Extreme ISO series, then a NAS is really interesting for you. One cool thing that you could also do is if you have a USB-C connection, you can also buy the Blackmagic Design Cloud Pod, which then functions as a NAS. So I have a really big redundant storage. I think it's like 18 terabytes. And it only was a DAS, a direct attached storage. But then I bought for like the Cloud Pod, you plug it in and suddenly you have a NAS.
All right, let's go to the next question.
Next question comes from Paul Walhus in Austin, Texas. Microsoft just announced VASA 1, a new AI model capable of generating lifelike talking face single portrait photo plus speech audio equals hyper-realistic talking face video with precise lip audio sync. Production uses, discuss.
I think we've seen a little of this coming into our panel recently. Courtney?
The stuff that I demonstrated here to the panel was from Emo, which is AliExpress group out of China that did it. Now, I don't know if I haven't seen this Microsoft VASA-1, but it sounds exactly like the same utility where you upload a single still photo of a face, and then you upload an audio file, which, like a person singing or speaking, and it animates the face with perfect lip sync and includes things like, your eyebrows, your emotional reaction, depending upon the content of the audio. It even puts breaths. You'll see the still image take a breath at each pause and after each phrase in a song. So if it's the same technology, it's quite impressive.
Yeah, you had the Mona Lisa. What was she doing? She was
reciting some poetry, but the song stuff is amazing. They have the the woman that's in the Sora, the woman walking down the street in Tokyo. They have the close up of her, and they animated her singing the song. In fact, they have 4 or 5 different still images singing the same song, and you can see a demo where they crossfade from one to the next, and it looks like they're singing this song, singing their heart out, and it works from a single still. Even when their head turns the other way, the ear that was not in the still photograph, it appears. So it generates all that stuff pretty well. Invisible.
Reminds me of a headline I saw in Harper's Magazine probably 30 or 40 years ago, and it was the end of photography as proof of anything. And I think we're moving to the end of anything live or video as proof of anything. It's really an interesting time we're living in. Let's go on to the next question.
Next question's from Anawahi Black Bear Marshall in Oahe. Didn't say yesterday BMD wasn't 2110 compliant, only with being codec-based compression. It may not be fully compatible with already used industry standards in 2110 gear, including compressed IPMX, etc. Will this end up as a walled garden instead of easy entry?
Yeah, I think BMD is Blackmagic design in that case, so he's interested in 2110 there. We're going to start with Jonas. Jonas.
So 2110, I think we need to go quickly over what 2110 actually is. 2110 is a suite of proposed specs. There's different versions of that already, like there's 2110.7, for example, that is Hitler's failover. -22 is defines the transport, which then allows you to bring your own codec. Blackmagic technically is fully compliant, could be fully compliant with that. We don't know if they are, but from the spec-wise, they could be fully compliant with supplying their own codec. Talking to Blackmagic people on the floor, it does sound like they only use 702110-22 with their own BCP10 codec for anything that is 12G, so 4K or higher, actually 4K 60 or higher. But the good news is that the stuff that's lower should still be cross-compatible. Blackmagic got a lot of flack for this, but let's be honest, if they really did something really cool and opened up 2110 to a whole new audience, they saw the issues that we are all talking about, like, hey, 2110 is so complex. Now we need IT admins and the broadcast engineer. And they said, hey, here's a switch that solves that uses NMOS for routing. Here's simple point-to-point devices that do it. And if you don't feel like a lot of people mentioned that they don't want to use copper cables, yes, there's an SFP version where you can use fiber cables. And I think really it's a little unfair to say, hey, they'll do everything they do out of spec. I mean, I too made the joke that Blackmagic now invented 702110 level B again. And it does feel a little like that with BCP10. But they are saying that they're going to release more information about that very soon. And who knows, maybe it's a really great codec. But let's be honest, it also doesn't have to be complex or great, because all they needed is like 30-ish% to down convert it. Like 12G is like 10.5 gigs of raw data rate for most of the formats. So like you really don't need to like compress it that hard. And most of the times, if we think about what they wanted to do, they wanted to bring 2110 to the mass markets. They could not have done that with H.264, H.265, where they need to pay licensing fees. Blackmagic is in this unique position where they produce a lot of the things in their own factory. Like they're not just buying an ASIC somewhere and then buying a board somewhere and shipping some Chinese stuff to you. They actually have their own factory, which allows them to do all this stuff at a relatively low price and bring it to the mass market. But at the same point, that also means they can't just be like, oh yeah, let's just buy an H.264 and H.265 codec. BCP10 also really is about being able to encode it fast and still, like they say 6 to 8 frames of latency. That's still a lot of latency. Imagine how much higher that would have been if they had to rely on a third-party vendor's H.264 and H.265 implementation. So I think saying that they're not fully compatible with already used industry standards, it's not really true. They are technically. It'll be seen, like I think you'll probably not be able to use Blackmagic gear with other gear that decodes 2110 4K for now. But who knows, maybe BCP10 gets a leg up. One really important thing to also say is it 2110 isn't specific enough that like everything is compatible by default anyhow. Like every time you have a huge deployment of SMT 2110, you get all the engineers from all the different vendors that you use into a room, and then they discuss how they think the spec should be implemented, and then you have to talk to each other and figure stuff out. That's one of the reasons why only big companies like NAP are really successful with that, because they have that pull to talk to their vendors. But also, who are we kidding? Like, other SMT 2110 gear is so expensive. If you're buying Blackmagic gear, you probably can't afford the other SMT 2110 gear that you're worried with that it won't be compatible with. And if you have that budget, you probably should stay there.
Ronnie Hofsoy.
Yeah, and if you have that budget, you probably won't be needing the walled garden that Blackmagic are supposedly set up. I don't think they are putting up a walled garden. I think they are making these technologies available for those that have lower budget, as Jason said. But I would rather have purchased Blackmagic 2110-22 implemented products and get started using 2110 instead of waiting 5 years or maybe never being able to purchase that. So for smaller studios like we have and for smaller venues and production companies, I think this is really a good idea. And when you are ready to make the jump to the more expensive tools, you just do it and start changing out equipment. It's easy as that.
Alex.
Yeah, one of the things that Blackmagic doesn't have to do that most other companies do need to do is interact with anyone else. So they can build things for themselves because they make almost everything as part of the pipeline. And so they don't have to do that. They do it when they need to, but they're able to kind of move forward. A lot of people have Blackmagic systems. I mean, I have a wide range of things, but for a long time, almost everything I had in my back end was all Blackmagic. And so it was easier for us to do. In fact, the only time we really noticed SDI-B versus SDI-A, because Blackmagic did this with SDI, was when we interacted with satellite trucks. They're like, I can't see a signal. And so we'd have to convert it there. But a lot of times, so I think that the Blackmagic's in a very unique position where they're not just making one thing, they're making the whole thing. And I think that allows them to innovate in a way that is difficult. It's very much like an Apple kind of approach where we can build what we need internally to keep our users moving forward and everyone else can figure it out. And I think that gives them a huge advantage over a lot of other manufacturers. I agree that I don't think that their format is breaking 2110. It's part of the format that was there. I think 2110, the consortium may have made, has made a lot of people upset because of the licensing issues. And so there's a lot of people looking for other solutions. And so I think that's and it's holding up 2110 in a lot of ways. And so I think that what Blackmagic has probably done more than anything else is light a fire that everyone has to pay attention to, because if they don't figure it out, Blackmagic's format will be 80-90% of the market inside of 2 or 3 years. And so it's going to put a lot of downward pressure on pricing. It's going to put a lot of pressure on rolling things out and getting, 2110 has been kind of spitting forward and falling backwards and everything else because it just isn't getting the industry totally tied in. There's definitely trucks out there. There's definitely production studios that are using it. But NDI has been doing much better than 2110 because of all these issues that are related to it. And Blackmagic is just kind of, between Blackmagic and NDI, I think the amount of pressure on the standard, quote unquote, standard 2110 world is crushing. Like they really have to do something quickly or it won't matter.
Jason.
Grant Petty is my favorite evil genius in just simply releasing something and simply saying, okay, let's see what happens with this. I'll remind you, I'm glad you brought up SDI, Alex, because 6G SDI was not a thing. The standards were 3 and 12. And Grant just thought, well, okay, we're going to do this 6G thing, and it's going to do up to 4K 30. And in the meantime, before I could afford a full SDI rig, I made a lot of money doing full 4K pipeline with Blackmagic equipment. So, there really is a use case here. And, it's all the benefit of bidirectionality that you get from Ethernet and considerably less money.
Let's go on to the next question.
Next question's from Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York. Morning, everyone. Thoughts on the new Elgato Neo line? Would this be a good line for creating remote kits? And there's a link to the product there.
I'm going to start with Jonas. Jonas?
Yes, it looks. I think it's a simple way to make it look less tacky and make it more approachable for people who don't like as much tech on their tables as we do. I do also think it looks very much more corporate-y, and I think it's nice. They did what's interesting is that they then also released the game capture in that, which I don't really understand why, going down the whole corporate thing, and then they release a game capture as well on the Neo. But I like it. I think I'll probably get one, and the light is really cool for remote kits because you could send out a laptop, an Inter360 link, some lavalier mic, and 2 of those lights, because for those who haven't seen it, those lights have a way to fix them on a screen. So now you don't need to build anything big up or build a big setup. You can just put them on a screen. They have dials and buttons on the front. So even if you don't have a network connectivity, which is the thing that a lot of people like with the Elgato lights, you can still use them. I think that's a really good choice for them. Yeah.
Maybe they just looked at the size of that Twitch market and said, there's something there. Let's go on to Alexander Knight.
Yeah, so, this is the products that we're talking about here. So one thing I'm concerned about is the looks. I do applaud them. I get it. A lot of this gear is very intimidating. People don't like big cameras, big microphones in their faces, huge mic booms, and all this stuff. So they tried to make the product look attractive. So I'm going to reserve judgment until I actually hear and see some of the examples of it. One thing is that microphone, I'm assuming this is probably going to be a condenser microphone, but you can see in the example here, you can see how far away it is from that person there. So, a lot of people don't have good sounding rooms, so that may be a problem. That's one thing that concerns me. So it's portable and it looks good, so we'll have to see how it sounds.
Courtney.
Yeah, I think I like Elgato products. They do have some good solid technology. I'm not sure, so they've basically repackaged them in a lovely Arctic white, so it better blends with your living room decor. Maybe I should get some, but I noticed, I don't know if I would use them to send out as a remote, because Stream Deck, can go wrong in so many ways when you plug it into a PC or a Mac. The light looks kind of like a makeup mirror. And this microphone, the pill-shaped microphone, it looks like a capsule I'm not sure whether it's side address, and I'm thinking this white thing here on the side is a light of some sort because it extends into this what looks like a foam windscreen. Maybe that tells you where the capsule is, but it's not directly in front. Or maybe it's an indicator of mute. I'm not sure. There's very little information on it on the website because it's so tastefully designed. And the Game Capture Neo, is has HDMI in, HDMI out, and then a USB-C connector that goes to your computer. So I guess if you have capture software or you're playing a game, it'll screen scrape and convert to a USB input. But it doesn't have a button on it, so I don't think there's single button non-computer based recording like many of the H.264 recorders that I have that will record without software on the computer. So who knows? It's they're going after the tastefully designed living room appliance. Maybe next they'll come out with avocado and harvest gold. That'll be their next colors.
Courtney, I want a T-shirt that says there's very little information on their website because it's so tastefully designed. I think that's my phrase of the day. Well done. I'm going to go to the next question.
Scott Mueller in Germantown, New York asks, Storyblocks.com has been very useful in my video creation. What other similarly priced unlimited libraries should we look at? And how close are we to AI-generated custom B-roll, and what platform will that manifest from, in your opinion?
Simple questions. Alex is going to take a shot here. Alex?
It's interesting. We use a lot of different things. Shutterstock and there's Shutterstock. There's Art List. I think that's out there as well. Pond 5 has a variety of things. I mean, I have to admit, I don't use as much B-roll as I used to. Mostly because I just feel like it doesn't connect as well with what I'm doing. It is good to throw in there. For stills, I use a lot of AI. Like I've kind of stopped using. I use Midjourney for 95% of the stills that I need that I would have bought from stock. So because it allows me to design it and make it a little more original and make it more applied to what I'm actually talking about. So I think that's changed. And so I obviously think that the video will change that way as well. I think that Getty is working very hard at both still and video as far as using their own library to generate the models to allow you to have any kind of still that you want or any kind of video that you want, but it'll also then remunerate the people that are part of it. So it'll look at what it used out of there and actually send money back to the folks where the images are based on, and so in some cases that's a Getty because they bought it outright. But in a lot of cases, there's people who would be getting residuals against that. And so I think that's Adobe is, I believe, working on the same style, although I think they bought most of their stuff out. So it's just going back, but it's covered. So I think that we'll see more of that. Those are the ones that I've used in the past, and I don't use as much as I used to. Oftentimes we try to go out and shoot something, or we try to work around that. But when we use it, it's usually, I think it's Art List is what we use probably more than anything else.
Ronnie.
Well, previously we'd done used a lot of content from these sites to make pitches to our clients. Those pitches, and of course there are production companies that still will be needing real photo or real content filmed on high quality cameras, etc., and delivered through these sites. We use Artlist to some extent and Storyblocks as well. We have stopped using that for our company because we are using AI to generate everything that we need to pitch things to our clients. And when the pitch is in the box, is that a slogan? We of course, start shooting with our normal cameras and the normal equipment. But we have almost, in every case, we stopped using these types of stock footage in our finished production, and we have definitely stopped using them in creating the pitches.
I'm on the other side of things. We're still doing a lot of comping using stock, and we have large bulk contracts with Shutterstock, which now is owned by Getty, and Getty is still doing a ton of that. And surprisingly, probably 50% of the stock that we put in our pitch things, which close an awful lot of our final sales, the client likes that footage so much they go through. For me, the difficulty with using the generative stuff is that I can't make it look exactly like what I want, and then when we can't really license it out to the client cleanly. So I think there's still a role for stock, at least in the kind of work we do. That doesn't mean that these other services aren't going to iterate and make it better. And I was interested to read just recently that Apple did an incredible thing with Shutterstock/Getty, and they are going to wrap. They bought out their entire library in terms of being able to train their AI models with it. So I think that's going to be real interesting to see if there's some integration in the Apple ecosystem with this huge stock footage library. I don't think they're rolling it into their products at all. I think they're just using it as training for what they're doing behind the scenes. But that may prove in a few years to be something really interesting. Let's go on to the next question.
Next question's from Brody Brazil in Danville, California. Let's say I wanted to use a Wacom One tablet as a telestrator through my ATEM Extreme. What is the preferred software that gives the best keyable output from a Mac? Thanks.
And I'm really happy to see that Alex raised his hand on this because he's our professional expert at all things keying, or telestration.
Yeah, Michael Forrest makes a great video pencil that works with NDI, so that's one way for you to look at how you're going to deliver that. If you're interested in testing what I do, I use a Wacom tablet with a Mac, and I key it over, and I'm pretty happy with what Juan and Robles and I have put together. Juan writing it and me asking for things. So you can reach out to me in Discord, and I'll send you. I can get you on the beta. So anyone who's interested in that, you can reach out to me directly. Again, Video Pencil's out there right now, and I think Michael Forrest has done a great job. Mine is, because I need it to be integrated with the rest of my hardware system, mine is a little bit different, and I'm very adverse to interface. So everything is all keystrokes and everything else, and so it's. If you want to see how I do a telestrator, then you can reach out to me. I'm very specific about what I like, and I'm making it for myself, and then we'll release it probably soon. Like it's pretty much done. We're rewriting some of the Juan is rewriting some of the internal code to make it a little more efficient, and then we'll be ready to go.
Let's go to the next question.
We have a QR code question from Todd in Maui, Hawaii. Are you also covering Sissgraph Asia this year?
Alex.
Not yet.
No one can send us to Asia. That'd be fun.
Well, I mean, so we'll talk about this in the second hour, but we broke some glass, glass ceiling that we had, which is that we have to send huge crews to things. What we did, what we showed, or what we tested over this week means that we could theoretically go to a lot of different events without a huge footprint. We had a large footprint for this, but it doesn't mean we would need to. That's going to open up a lot more conferences that we could possibly, be part of. But we're going to stick with the ones we've done in the past this year because we're developing. We're trying to there was a kind of we'll talk about this more in the second hour. Like a roaming around, I will admit I'm pretty unhappy with most coverage of most conferences, and so I think there was a lot of us roaming around trying to find something, and I think this week we found it, so now that we'll be working on logistics and process to make it better. It's not perfect by any means, but we definitely, I think, found the seeds of what we're looking for. So what you'll see us do is probably not try to get a lot of new conferences this year. We may do a couple. But primary, and definitely not ones out of the country, except for the IBC team. But the IBC team kind of works on their own, so they're kind of independent from the process here, or that I'm like working on for these ones. But the ones that we're looking at right now from the team, from what I'm looking at as far as this internal process is Cinegear, Sissgraph, US. And then NAB New York. So those are the ones this year that we'll do. We may expand that more, and then of course the IBC team, we hope will take on IBC again because they do a great job there. So I think that's but I think that's what we're looking at this year. Probably will not. We may expand a little bit only because we want to experiment more, but we'll be pretty careful about that. It's a lot of logistics. Each one of these we have to figure out financial. Like the financial process of how to make it work. We had a lot of really great donors that made this one work. So, but we have to figure that out a little bit more effectively as we move forward.
Let's go to the next question.
All right, next question is from me. Has anyone on the panel tested Blackmagic Cloud presentations? I invited a client so they can review some content and provide feedback. When I sent the email invite, it took them to my dashboard, which he should not be able to see.
Alex, have you had experience with this?
No, we're going to be doing more with Blackmagic Cloud, but the state of the art for presentations is Frame.io. Like it is and so I would not experiment with anything else at this point. And we're about to jump into the beta of it. I talked to Emery about it at NAB, and I think he's going to come on the show and talk to all of us about it. But it is the beta, and I didn't realize how expansive it is. They've put tools in there for every area of production planning, from the scripts to the casting to every piece of it. And there's very few people in the world other than Emery that could do that. And so you'll see us starting to beta test that process as we move forward. But I think that I think that if I was I use Frame.io for reviews every day. so it's and I just wouldn't recommend. I mean, it's so easy and it's so well established and so smooth. It's probably not the place that I would look for Blackmagic to do that, at least yet. I think they're still working on the Blackmagic Cloud. I think from a production pipeline of moving stuff back and forth between artists, I would take it on. I don't know if I would use it in the way that you're using it right now, even though it has the feature. Sometimes you want to give Blackmagic a little time to evolve the feature, but I think that's probably what happened there.
Let's go to the next question.
All right, next one is from John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania, with Eamon Drew leaving Bird Dog and the concern over Bird Dog PTZs from Bolin. Are folks worried about the trajectory of the Bird Dog brand?
And Alex is going to help us here.
I think that happened almost a year ago. So I think that he stepped away in May of 2023 or hasn't been active. And I think that, and I think that there is some concern about Bird Dog. Eamon ended up landing at Atomos, where he's doing business development there. And he is an incredible resource. I don't know what is going on in Australia, but there's so much development there. One Australia, it's amazing. I still think it's all because of JCar. There's 130 JCar locations, and I think it just creates a technical thought process there that doesn't exist in other places. I really do. I mean, I know that sounds like a crazy thing, but JCar is the most amazing store in the world. But I think that, I think Bird Dog has some challenges there. I think the problem now is that a lot of the bigger companies are now really looking at these larger formats. I mean, we use the Sony FR7s for our show. I use them for a lot of my shows. It's really hard to go back. So if you're in a chip size, less than Super 35, I think you can get away with it for some corporate stuff. But when you look at the where YouTube leans, and what a lot of people expect from a visual perspective, I think that 1 inch would be bare minimum, and I think that really Super 35 and full frame sensors are going to become more and more the ones that people want to use for a lot of their productions. And so I think that's more what presses down. I noticed that I looked at PTZs, and as soon as I saw the chip sizes for most of these PTZs at NAB, I just kept going. I was like, okay, that's fine. So I think that's going to be the challenge. One of the challenges they have.
Let's go to the next question.
Next question's from Douglas Carmichael. I recently set up a virtual server on the Vultr cloud for a local library and was very pleased with the experience. Could Vultr be a worthy competitor to AWS and Azure in production workflows?
Jason has some thoughts. Jason?
No. I looked over the site. It looks nice. 45 million cloud servers launched total. I feel like Amazon is regularly doing that, in several different continents at the same time. It looks very good. It looks very nice and user-friendly, but it doesn't look anywhere near the same scale. AWS runs a significant amount of the internet, so looks nice, but not the same thing.
Jonas?
You probably would be able to do simple single instance productions. One of the things that is often overlooked with these is when you read GPU, make sure that you also have Windows access, because a lot of these are built for machine learning training classes. And if you scroll down on the GPU side, the first thing you'll see is NVIDIA, NGC, and Anaconda, which is really common data science and machine learning prediction frameworks. So that's where you see where the customer base is. And I have to admit, while the start has been a little rocky with AWS and them supporting cloud workflows, look at how big their booth was at NAB. look at how many media services they're releasing lately. Look at all the services that you get, all the tutorials, like all the little things that they do, and just say as soon as you do more than a single instance production, like you need a Zoom room and something, that's where AWS really is king right now. Their internal networking is the easiest to manage that I've yet to see. Like, networking between other cloud servers is most of the time really painful. With AWS, it's not. And then as you grow, you can just tag these little services on, I'll take an Elastic file system here, and I'll take some API management there, and I'll take a load balancer. And most people just started there. Like, I mean, if you want to go back 4 years in time and start all by yourself again without anybody being able to help you, feel free to. But I don't think it's viable for more than single instance productions.
Next question.
Scott Mueller in Germantown, New York asks, with the rebranding of Zoom Workplace, is a big push from Zoom to have all video production migrate to Zoom Events coming? How long will we be able to use Zoom Workplace as we have been?
Alex, what do you think?
I don't have that answer. I'm not at Zoom, but so I don't know how long it will be. I do say that I will say that Zoom is generally pretty good at figuring out those transitions in a way that works. I think that they have to figure out exactly where all those things fit in from a financial perspective to make sure that all of this stuff is paid for, because it's an incredible amount of development. Zoom is moving. I think that I talked recently about the fact that WebEx was moving faster than almost anybody else there, out there, or anybody else. And then this last week, Zoom released an enormous number of tools, from tiles to the tiles, by the way, looks amazing. We were using Unreal. We were using the Pro AV setup. We were using all of the things that they're building that allow us to do production. And so, I think that we just have to figure out how to I think they have to effectively rationalize that process. So we'll see how that works. But I can't say what that rationalization will be, but it's going to be to make sure it's sustainable, which we as production people definitely need.
Next question.
Next question is from Pedro Gonzalez in Oklahoma. Any thoughts on the Insta360 X4?
Ronnie Hofsoy is going to help us out. Ronnie?
Daft Punk has a song called, what's it called? Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger, or something like that. I'm not sure that the Insta360 X4 is going to provide all those, but at least it's a newer model. I've had both the first one and the X2, and was planning to buy the intermediate one. I did something else instead, and I think this is something that I'm going to purchase. I'm driving a motorcycle as well in the summer. In Norway, we just have 2 days of summer, and you have to drive the motorcycle those 2 days. And filming it is the proof that you actually was able to drive it those 2 summer days. So I'll get one of these and report back.
That's impressive. 2 days. You don't want them to be rainy. That's terrible. Next question.
Asmuk Jar in Cape Town, South Africa asks, is Zoom Tiles a standalone app or integrated into Zoom Workplace client? What do we know?
Jonas, can you help us out?
My understanding at this point in time is it's a standalone client for the macOS platform. It's basically meant to generate custom gallery views. And for those people that now are saying, when is it coming to Windows? It's already there. It's called Zoom SDK for Unreal Engine. You'll just need a little more work and you get some really great results. Yeah.
Alex?
Yeah, it's an amazing product. I mean, I got to play with it a little bit on the floor, and Andy, of course, there's a great segment inside of our coverage on Tuesday. For day 3, I believe that it kicks off with Andy talking about it, and you'll get a demo of it. And I think that our days of using a multi-view to do our gallery views are numbered. I think this is really a better solution for that solve, and the ability for us to customize that and really just make it, for people who are doing especially hybrid events, this is going to be really interesting because that's what it's really built for, I think, or broadcasts like us, where we might have a big panel, being able to display these in a way that doesn't look like a run-of-the-mill Zoom meeting, which looks fine, but it would be great to be able to be creative and add those pieces. It's just really an amazing product. So we're really excited. You'll see more of us using that as in the not-too-distant future.
Yeah, I watched back some of Tuesday's show just to see how things looked when I was coming back on the plane, and Andy had me fascinated with all the changes there, so definitely something worth looking into. Let's go to the next question.
Jonathan Daigle in Washington, D.C. asks, how can I stop Zoom attendees from connecting AI note-taking apps, Grain, Otter, to a meeting which is widely attended by public users? Our meeting is held not for attribution, and recordings violate our terms.
Issues. Jason, start us off.
Anyone with a capable mixer or a video processing unit is going to exploit or can exploit what's commonly called the analog loop. As long as they can output it, screen scrape it, or record it, and then feed it into something else later, I can't think of an easy way to thwart that, at least, not without a team of lawyers. Maybe someone farther down the line has a better idea, but no, I can't think of anything.
Jonas, what do you think?
There's a couple things that you can do. You could look into trying to disable Zoom apps if you are able to disable that on their account, if they're your account users. Then you could use registration. I'm not sure if those type of apps are able to join you with registration. And I think Obvio, if you held a meeting through Obvio probably would also protect you from that with their really cool security that they have in it. You can also just automatically have someone there that something is called auto AI, kick it. But I would try registration and disabling Zoom apps. And probably you can also disable recordings on the Zoom meeting level. Disable that for that specific account. That might also be able to help.
Courtney.
Yeah, your terms of service are only as good as your enforcement of those terms of service. And if you're not willing to sue someone over violation of your terms of service, and that can get pretty sticky if you're available to the public, it's going to be almost impossible to enforce because, as Jason said, the analog loop, if whatever your meeting is, if you can see it and hear it, like most people attend the meeting have to be able to see it and hear it, you can scrape it or record it and feed it into anything you want to in a second computer that's not even hooked up to your Zoom session. So any countermeasures are going to be pretty difficult to employ. The music business has been worried about this for years, and the video business, and they've been trying DRM and countermeasures for years and have not been successful at it. You're also probably nowadays going to violate some ADA rules for accessibility if you do anything that hinders the translation of your audio into visible text, or now it could be hooked up to an AI engine to auto-summarize. Now, if you took the results of those recordings and posted them somewhere, then you can be liable for lawsuit if you're violating those terms of service. So be careful about that. But for personal use, I think there's no way they can enforce it.
Alex.
If it IDs who it is, kick him out. Just block them. You put up a terms of service and say, this is against your terms of service, and someone turns it on and you trace it back to who's turned it on, block them. I will say that we're pretty open, and we still have a lot of safety kind of protocols here at office hours. But in the shows that I do, when we deal with the public, the public participants, there's going to be 3% that cause 90% of the problem, and what we found is not to really deal with them. We just get them out of just push them out of the show. So and we don't really have any. We don't feel bad about that. Because it just cleans up the whole. You'd be surprised at how quickly it cleans up the whole thing if you just get rid of the folks that are causing trouble. So and you just have to be very thick-skinned about it because. That's the easiest way to manage an online project is just to get rid of the 3% that are causing friction.
Absolutely. We are within a minute of our breakdown of NAB discussion. We're really looking forward to this. We had such a great time and so many talented people helped us do what we did out of Las Vegas. So we'll be looking at the booth, the tech stack, and everything else, a discussion, what it took for doing 4 days of live reporting from the floor at NAB. Alex will be right back at the top of the hour with that. Don't forget, look into officehours.global if you need some more information about the show and what happens here. And don't forget, if you aren't into our backend system in Mukana, where you can actually affect the run of the show by voting topics that we discuss every day here at Office Hours up and down, please do that. You can go to the website and get links into that and be a bigger part of the show.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. and I'll take over the second hour. And if you have questions about what our coverage, and really this is more about a Q&A, we're going to show you a handful of slides. I'm trying to find one more slide. If one of our panelists have any pictures of the live view slides. I had one and then I put it somewhere and I can't find it. I just got in last night, so we drove back yesterday. And so I have a handful of photos I'm going to show you, and then we'll also talk through answering your questions, probably drawing a couple of diagrams about how we have this all set up. Now, one of the things that comes up a lot is like, why are we even doing these? Why don't we just keep on doing what we're doing here? And I think it's important to kind of set the stage for why we've decided to kind of go down this path. Now, I've been covering conferences for about almost 30 years, and I've been at conferences, covering those conferences in one way or another. And I think that there's a couple things that we look at about why we're doing it. Number one is it's a chance to work together outside of the show. The show has a certain cadence to it, and there's a certain team to it. And by the way, we always want more people on that team. You can go to officehours.global/volunteer if you're interested in being on the team that does the daily show. But a lot of folks, there's an opportunity for us to work. I mean, one thing you don't see when you see the NAB show is the weeks and months of meetings that are, to get us to where we are. The other, so there's a lot we get to hang out. It gives us a reason to do that. And again, working together, and I will say that working with the team that was on the ground, and the team that was online, and the team that was helping to plan was just really a great experience for a lot of people. I think that we had a really great time on the ground. We had a really great time with this kind of interaction between on the ground and in the cloud. And so I think that is from a community process, that's a really important piece of that puzzle. Another one is serving our online community. So what I call the 5 nines, the 99.999% that are never going to be able to go to an event. Like they're never going to be able to go to NAB for time, passports, money, all those things. They're not going to be able to get there. And how do we, effectively give them some of that show, some of that experience? It's never going to be the same as being there. Being at NAB is a whole experience, but it's also thousands of dollars of flying there and getting hotels and doing all the things that are necessary to put it together. And that's a huge commitment for people. How do we get to a point where we can effectively give at least a growing amount of stuff? And we're not, what we did today, what we did this last week is still scratching. It's so, we're so scratching the surface that you wouldn't even see the scratch, of what we covered at NAB. And so, but it is deeper than any other coverage I saw this week. So there's other things that look nicer that were done in post. There's almost no other live, by the way. There's some live roundtables, but I didn't see anyone else. There may have been somebody else streaming, but I didn't see anybody else streaming from the floor other than us, like actually going to booths and streaming those types of things. And there may have been somebody else, but I didn't see a lot of it show up, and definitely not at the same quantity, and I would argue the same quality that we did. And so that is how do we continue to figure out a way to do it? Not just for NAB, but the IBC team does a great job doing IBC, which is kind of the European version of NAB. The Sissgraph gave us a sense of what those things look like. Cinegear gives us a tour of those. And these are things that a lot of people are never going to get to go to. So how do we bring this to them? It's very imperfect right now because no one's done it, trying to do it as aggressively as we have. And so it is but it is that imperfectness is the goal. There's no way to get better other than to do it. Other than to figure it out. And so a lot of it is just diving in and doing what we can to figure this out. The third thing is that, we really have been trying to find a better style of coverage. So as I said before, I've been doing this for 30 years, and it has never really changed. You got a person walking around with a microphone, they're interviewing somebody, or there's some, there isn't something that really moved the dynamic at all. And I would argue until what we did this week, which we'll show a little bit of. I think that we did something that, and I think for the last 2 years, I know that I was searching for something else. I'm just like, I don't want to keep doing the same old thing, and I, how do we find something? And one of the challenges with that is that you can't really, you as you're innovating, you don't know exactly what that looks like. And one of the things that's really easy to do is you start adding logistics really, really early on, and then it just becomes the same thing again, because it's easy to do it that way. So really figuring out that process has been very challenging, and I think we found it. Like, we found what we're going to probably do for the next 3 to 5 years, and we're going to get better at it and refine it. But I don't think that we're going to. I think that when we talk through this, I think we're going to probably keep doing some version of what we did here for quite some time. It's definitely an imperfect execution because it's the first time anybody has done many of the parts that we did. So, but it is. But I think that it gave us a sense of what we could be doing. And it opened up some new possibilities in the way we cover events. And the fourth thing is that we want to connect with the industry. So, I mean, I think that, 2 years ago, I couldn't get NAB to reply to me. Like, I couldn't, like 2 years ago, I couldn't get them to reply to me. Last year, they gave us as many press passes as we wanted, for our team. This year, they gave us a booth, and they spent hours in our booth watching what we were doing, because our coverage was far more, dynamic than live than any other coverage that was on the floor, like by a long shot. And again, it's very imperfect, all done by volunteers, not organized as well as we'd like it to be. All those things was still better than, other ones were better organized. I will say the NAB main show, the many, the round tables that people did in some of their booths were better organized. They're just hard to watch, and so we, I think that we did something that was, again, a little bit chaotic, but also very effective at doing that. And now we have a lot of people, and the amount of contacts that we made in 1 week is, will reverberate through the entire year. And that's without us going to all these other events. So these events, we make a big contact. It's fine to sit there and go, hey, we're from office hours and so on and so forth. When we walk up with a live camera, especially one that gets people's attention, which you'll see in a second, it changes how people operate with you. When you take a $100,000 system and roll it up to them to do an interview, what they think of you and how they interact with you changes dramatically, and it opens up a lot of doors that, again, allow us to bring more content back to everyone here. So that's, those are the big things, big reasons we're taking these on. I'll show you a couple photos. I don't have all the photos I'd like to show you, mostly because I got in late last night driving back, but I have a handful of the photos that I took, and we'll do more as we do some of the more case studies and so on and so forth. But I'll show you a couple things. This is what it actually looked like when we arrived. So this is the booth space that NAB, and again, you throw those questions in, we'll answer the questions as best we can as we go through it. They gave us a package that included this really cool, it was funny, 2 weeks before, they were like, hey, we need the graphics for your background. I was like, the graphics? And I thought I was going to get like this, over here. No, they were like, no, we have a graphic for you. They printed this all out. This, by the way, is a really, I was afraid that it was muslin, but it's actually a really thick, when I cut it, I cut this part out. I was like, I'm keeping that part. And of course, the person who came just pulled the rest of it out like with their hand. And I was like, I could have just pulled it out. I thought it was like somehow stitched in there. I of course didn't know. So anyway, so I have this part. You'll see it later. And then Peter Rosato ended up with that part. But this is what we came. It was funny. We ordered different parts, and it was all part of our package, but we got both sets. And so we had a lot more tables than we needed, but we figured that out. Let me make sure I'm focused here. This is the remote rig that we did, and we'll kind of bounce around a little bit. So this is a remote rig that we had here. And so the goal here, and what's funny is this was based on something we did for a wedding 10 years ago at a much smaller scale, a couple little Teradeks and a screen and everything else. But the idea is to get the to get out of the way of the interaction. I really feel like I'm interviewing someone, interaction. It does a couple different things that I think are interesting. That I think became clear to me when we did this. When I talk to someone else, if you have two people talking to each other here, it puts this person on the outside. So the viewer is on the outside of that conversation. When we had the panel, and we'll talk about this in a second, it puts the viewer in the middle, in a place that doesn't exist in the world, which is, I think, very interesting, as far as that goes. And so what you can see here is that we have the panel that was right on that screen. And they were able, all I would do is introduce the person. And I'm not even sure if that's necessary in the future. We did decide it was this time because we hadn't done it before, but I think that we can get out of the way of that. And so we have the panel here, and now this person is talking. And I got to tell you, one of the big impacts is Grant would introduce himself from South Australia, and you could just see people's eyes go, whoa, and with Adrian there, we had with Ronnie there, you suddenly realized there was this global thing that was going on, that was happening. You're talking to people all over the world. And I got to say, I think it's a better conversation than someone with just one person with a mic talking to someone. Having the expertise that we had there, Grant and Courtney, and the many others that were on the, there was this moment, I think I have a picture of it, I'll show it in a second. There was a couple peak moments. And one peak moment was when Courtney is talking to prompter people. I was like, I don't think they have any idea who they're talking to. like the inventor of what they're making is asking questions from his home. And it was just like, it for me, that underlined the model of what was possible. Another one that I thought I had grabbed the photo, but I don't know if I'll have it for you. Lindsay Optics was this one right after. So this one here, Chad, we worked with Chad here. This is at Lightgear, and Tlaloc had interviewed Chad at Cinegear. So he was the very first person to try this because I knew he would be great. So I was like, there was a little bit of a ringer there. Like he didn't know I was coming, but I came over and told him. He's like totally into it. And I knew he would just knock it out of the park. The next one, though, was Lindsay Optics. And I was like, it just had my name. Like I literally didn't know anything about the booth. I just thought, oh, that'll be funny. Let's see how this goes. And the owner is not in a generation you'd expect to really jump into this really quickly. And it was completely seamless. Like they just completely jumped into it. And suddenly, and here's when I saw something that was new. Was they were picking things up and showing it to the camera. Like, here, look at this and look at this and look at this. When you have a person interviewing, they're naturally going to show it to the person interviewing, and the camera has to kind of find its place to go. Whereas when they're showing when they only have a camera to work with, you can see there's a good shot. Jason's showing when there is the person is showing it to the camera and it is there. If we can cut to that, I don't know if we can or not, but the Jason's shot there, but you had the person showing something straight to the camera. So and I felt like it gave you a different kind of window. It's kind of a little John Malkovich, if you've ever seen that movie, of you're in somebody's head and you're getting to see what they see. And I think that was. It was a really, really interesting part of the process. Now, what that rig did, by the way, I'll cut back to it here, is the rig we had basically, the speaker was a backup, and I'll be honest, the speaker didn't work that well. We needed a couple things to do. We needed to do a little bit more work on EQ so that it just cut to people's voices. A little too much bass in there. My son printed this little thing, which I was very proud of. He did it in about a day and a half with the printer. Now, what we had here was this screen, of course. We had two electrosonic receivers here with the mic plugs, and those went in directly into the camera. That camera used a Vislink, and you can see it's hard to see here, but there's an antenna, a big antenna. Now, Vislink is what they use for the Super Bowl. And we knew that we would need something like that to get to any amount of the booth. And we got about, I would say about a third to a half of the central hall we had access to through that wireless system. But there's so much RF, so many LEDs. And that's one of the things we had to figure out is what it was going to take. We also had some height limits on where we could put the antenna. just because, and again, those are things we learned we can ask for those in advance, and we'll have them much higher the next time. But that was there. So that would send that signal back. And then the more complicated part was coming back into the system. So we had a receiver over here. This is another Vislink receiver. And this was sent, number one, it was sent to the monitor so that people could see it. And number two, it was sent up to this de-embedder, which de-embedded the audio and put it back into the into a IFB transmitter. And we found that now in the first one we did use the speaker, but very quickly we started moving more and more to the IFBs. It was just, they could hear more clearly and it worked better. Although I still think that the speaker, there's something magical about not having them have to do anything to be interacting. But that wasn't, we didn't do that this time. We thought about there's a couple of things that we thought about with the rig that we didn't do, or that I thought about in the rig while I was building. Over 2 weeks, there was basically, to build that rig, there was this steady stream of Amazon packages showing up at my house and me sitting there building stuff and ordering and building stuff, and getting the cuts were about $35 each on average, me figuring out little bits and pieces. It's a big rig. It looks like an alien thing, and it's probably more gack than we'd like. It's just that figuring out where everything goes, there wasn't enough time to start figuring out how to compact it. There were so many moving parts. And so the idea was just have it out there. I was a little concerned about heat, concerned about antennas, those types of things. And so that's one of the reasons that I got a couple more of those photos, Jason. So that's how that process worked there. No, I got another couple photos here. So this is the other part of this was one of the other three. Was the booth here. Now we were using Zoom's Unreal Engine, which was amazing. I mean, just really an amazing experience. So, so Zoom helped us and with getting this going. And basically, this is 3D tiles with our panel there, and we used them to, we could put the camera wherever we wanted. We were using the FR7s, so from Sony, and Sony lent us the cameras to use for this. So we had cameras that we could get great close-ups of. You can see that they're able to get objects that were there. We didn't end up with as many as we thought, but that's what the cameras were good for, and they were exceptional, of course. And then we had this camera in front of the monitor, and we were able to place everyone around it. And again, there was a couple different setups, but Zoom basically, with the new plugin, we were able to simply join. Zoom was able to join the Zoom meeting, and then immediately I got a better picture of that. Just hold on for that image. So Zoom was able to join the meeting and and be part of the and pull people in and just put them on the windows. So that worked out really well. Let's see here if I show. Here's another shot of that back end, so you can kind of see all the bits and pieces I wanted to kind of show. Now, here you can see that we went over to Lilliput and showed them what we were doing, and they immediately just handed us another monitor to use. So they gave us a bigger monitor so that it was a little clearer. We also used Zoom's new 6.0. Let's see if I have it on the other. There we go. So one of the things we did is we jumped into the new 6.0 for Zoom, and what that allowed us to do was it does this kind of soft, making the people, there's one setting where we can have people zoom up when they're speaking, so that way we could have, it wasn't just limited to a little grid that we started with a day earlier. So 2 days earlier, we'd started with a grid on a smaller screen. Now we have a larger screen with a better layout there. So that was already an improvement over what we had before. This was, here you can see, and this is where things started to get, where it really we started to also realize that it had an impact on folks. This when we went to Stipe, I told them what we were doing. They said, "Okay, we'll get you in." And then they said, "Well, who's watching?" I said, "Well, we'll have 6 people in Zoom interviewing them from all over the world, and then there's about 200 people watching live." And they immediately said, "Can you wait another 30 minutes?" And I thought they were putting us off. And when the person walked up, the person who's standing there in this image, I said, "Who? Can I get your name?" And he goes, "I am Stipe." so I was talking to the founder of the company now. So it was an entirely different experience, because basically that rig was 6 experts backed up by anywhere from about 130 to 250 people, walking around the show floor. And so it was a really unique experience. And again, when we talk about making connections within the industry, it was really important. Here's what the backend looked like here. So you can see the Zoom Unreal Engine over here was there. We had a X32 mixer here. We were able to just see the multi-view. This is another multi-view that was just different. All four computers all mapped together. We did end up bringing a Constellation as a backup, and the reason for that is that we wanted to know that if something happened, we could actually do the show there. We had a Teradek. I don't think we ended up using the Teradek, but we tend to put Teradeks into things just as a backup. We had the PepLink, which Jonas really did most of the yeoman work on pulling that, making it all work and building the VPN. Guy was actually able to run the, there was an interface, and Jonas may have that interface that he can show us. But Guy had, Jonas built an interface, and Guy was actually able to control the cameras control those cameras from Seattle. So the FR7s were all be able to remote, both with hardware and with the interface itself. We used a little old one of my old Pix 240s to do some embedding, and then we had, this is the receiver for the Vislink, it's the controller for the Vislink, and over here, here's our little, when we're talking about Zoom rooms, this was just a Duo card, and that was getting the Zoom the panelists. I think it might have been a quad card, getting the panelists out of the meeting and into the production system. So, and did we end up, Jonas? Did we end up using the Osprey?
Yeah. So every single day, the Osprey encoded a low latency WebRTC feed that was sent to Dolby I/O, and then that was what both Guy but also Kirsten in Germany saw on the interface to be able to switch.
Yeah, and so Osprey had lent us they had lent us a Talon, and we it was very effective, and I want to definitely thank the many companies that came together. NAB gave us a booth. The cost of that booth is not the cost of that booth space, because it wasn't just the space; it was the whole package, the space, that print on the back, and some basic furniture and all those other things. I don't know exactly what that value is because we didn't have to pay for it, but I think that it's like $10,000 or $12,000 for that for the package that comes with some power and some other things. I believe it might be more than that. It's definitely not less than that. So I think that it's somewhere between it might have been $10,000 to $18,000 worth of value. Zoom helped us with the connectivity. So making sure that we had the connect. This is not a minor. There was multiple connections to Zoom, and so that was not a minor amount of. We couldn't just get a 5 meg connection. It was a 50-50 connection. Zoom made that possible, and so that's made us being able to use Zoom on the floor different, and that's part of what did this transformational part with this camera. And most people don't have bandwidth. That's why you don't see a lot of live streams, because it's really expensive to do that. And then Sony was amazing, and I asked for the Sky, and they gave it to us. They were like, "What do you need?" And I was like, "Oh, it would be really good if we had 4 FR7s and 3 FX6s." And it was like Sony was a hard bargainer. They said, "Would you like that on Wednesday or Friday?" so they sent the cameras out, and they worked flawlessly, all the cameras. Vislink sent us the transmitters. I have some friends there, and it's just such an amazing transmitter. It's complex, it's heavy, it's a big transmitter. And so Vislink sent us the transmitters that we were using there. Of course, Electrosonic provided all the mic receivers and the IFB receivers. And so that made a huge difference there. Lilliput, as I said, provided some of the bits and pieces there for some of the screens. And I think I've covered everyone that handed us something there. But LiveView, of course, gave us a LiveView backpack. I have a picture of it that I'm going to go find while we're talking. LiveView has really been super supportive of our process, and it really made a difference. So to kind of back up a little bit, and we're going to jump into questions here in just a second. What we did is we basically, and if you saw this was the plan, and we had a couple delays on it, but basically the plan was to basically have the booth, and then we'd have a little bit of wireless, and then we'd have a little bit of live view, and then back to wireless. And the reason for that is, number one, is it rests the teams. Well, that was the intention. It rests the teams as you bounce through. It allows you to bounce back and forth. And the live view allowed us to cover places that we couldn't get with the wireless, the different booths, the different areas. And so all of it gave us that opportunity. The booth gave us somewhere to go when people don't have a booth to go to. Or, so all of those things worked, I think, exceptionally well together. We had some issues on our end with the live views, not live view itself, but just some stuff that, we had a bunch of big moves and everything else. And but we got it working. And by the last day, by the second to the last day and the last day, we had just, all of those things started to work together. And again, we started to see it work. And I think that as we move to the next time we probably activate a system like that will most likely be Sissgraph. We're working with Drexel on some booth space there, and if that all works out, then we'll have you'll probably see all three of those components happen again. Sissgraph's a little easier because the expo's all in one place, so it's a little easier for us to wander around a little bit. So, but I think that you'll see another version of that. A couple things that anyway. That's kind of a brief overview. If you've got questions, go ahead and throw those in, let's go ahead and jump into those questions.
Mark Heppy from Rotorua, New Zealand asks, could office hours give us a rundown of the gear and people involved to run the live production at NAB 2024? And that's a QR code question.
Go ahead, Jonas.
There we go. I actually am going to pull up the H2R gear plan that is pretty close to one thing. I guess you'll all find out that I'm a video engineer and not so much in audio. All the audio stuff is different. It was done instead of XLR cables. But apart from that, we pretty much did it like this. We had the FR7s going into the Decklink Duo, mics going into the X32, all of the Mac Minis that you would want. But it's surprisingly simple. And what's really interesting, like when Alex said we had a 50 up, 50 down, we used it. Like one of those Zoom rooms, sending 4 feeds, we use up to 38 Mbits of bandwidth up, and then like pulling those 6 feeds down. Like we didn't have issues. We budgeted our bandwidth enough. I think we did a good job at doing that. But yes, we definitely used it, and I think it went noticeable. And then to talk about the cloud real quick, we had a Peplink Fusion Hub there deployed. With the Peplink we bought, you get a free one seat license. So we put that in the cloud, and everybody VPN'd into there because I wouldn't trust the on-site venue to give us the right IP address and the right port forwarding. I'm like, instead of dealing with all that, I'll just ship all the traffic that we need out. That worked really well. JJ had control over the mixer. Mickey was in there. Kristen from Germany, Guy. Kevin had access to it, and then we also had access through the router directly through InControl. So if the whole cloud failed, we still had backup access. Then there were a lot of people on site.
It was an incredible team. I mean, and what was interesting is as we started to build, and I can't list every single person because I think our ground team was somewhere between 15 and 20 people, made it to the ground and were part of it. And I don't have it right in front of me. I don't want to list some that not get to everybody. But what I will say is that there were so many people that just kind of appeared, and it felt like they were appearing at the right time. Like I'm sitting there looking at the transmitter going, I'm gonna have to figure that out. And then TJ shows up and he's like, hey, would you like, what can I do? And I was like, figure out this transmitter. Here, do this. And, Peter Rosado was amazing getting things and running things back and forth. But it was like that every single day where people were showing up and getting things done and putting things together, and we were combining kits. I know that Edwin and I had a couple meetings beforehand trying to talk through all of the different bits and pieces of stuff that we had laying around, and what the kits were going to look like. And so it was. I think that there was a lot of great camaraderie of a team there that really was just looking to figure this out, and in a very again in an area where we haven't done it before, and we don't have a budget or very much budget to do it in, and so I think inside of those things, I think it was pretty effective, and it was big. It was a big team though, and an incredible team on the back end too. I mean, the team that was making, I want to do one call out to Brian Shand, who just did an amazing. I mean, it was just so much work. like so much work, and it should have been 4 people. It will be 4 people in the future. 4 to 8 people will be doing what Brian did by himself, and he just did such an amazing job of, and he's always so calm. He's always like this dead calm. He was really fantastic. Many other people did a great job. I just want to make sure that we call out to Brian how amazing the work that he did was. Let's go ahead and go to the next question.
We have another QR code question from Todd in Maui, Hawaii. Really enjoying your live coverage of NAB. Where can we see a full behind the scenes of the setup you are using to walk the show floor?
Go, Jonas.
I think you can see glimpses in the coverage. So you'll just need to watch all of the shows again. You'll see glimpses here and there, and maybe we'll get some behind the scenes pictures.
Yeah, we showed some already, and we'll put up more. I'm going to do a more. This is kind of our informal. We just did this. I'm going to collect some more photos. If you have photos that you think that should be included, go ahead and send them to me. I'm going to put together a little video that kind of breaks it all down. That's might be a 5 or 10 minute video for people that we'll put up as a VOD. That'll just go through a bunch of the stills and so on and so forth. So send those to me, and we're going to cut those together over the next week or two. Next question.
Another one from the QR code. Brett Dykes in Kansas City asks, thank you for all the coverage of NAB. It was very much appreciated. How did the booth placement in the central hall work out?
Go ahead, Bill.
It was kind of critical in that while the Vislink system was fabulous and it was amazing to be able to interact with people live on the show floor, there were limitations to the range that we could go. There were a lot of things we saw off in the distance and, wow, it'd be great over there. At some point, we may be able to get repeaters or things like that. The only frustrating thing for me was not being able to roam the entire show and bring that back and forth panel on the front of the camera coverage to the entire thing, because it was magical. As soon as you told somebody you're just in a Zoom meeting in a booth, their stress level really reduced, and they were able to engage with the camera as if it was a Zoom meeting because they were very familiar with that format. So it really made what I was doing on the show floor, which was just going booth to booth and saying, hey, do you want to go on a meeting live and reach a huge audience? And as soon as I mentioned that it was just a Zoom meeting and they'll be able to interact with people and hear them, all the stress kind of went out of them, and it was easier to get yes.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, Bill and I both got to see this firsthand, and it was just amazing. I understood Alex's vision like before I left, and then I watched when people saw a Zoom grid, and it was just, microphone here and bye, and they see the grid and they relaxed and they just immediately understood it. And I can't explain it because the booths are high tension and people don't, they don't want a camera in their face if they don't understand it, but they got it, and they got it immediately. It was pretty neat.
What I was amazed by is how people would loosen up when they realized it just was going to be a conversation with someone and they just happened to be on the other side of a screen. We were working with some guys that were automating. They had a remote head and they had a track, and one of them was a little impatient. He was like, I can't be here all day. Watching the other one go, he's like, I got to go. And I thought, oh, this is going to be a horrible one. And he started off kind of stale, and then next thing you know, I look over and he's like showing things and pulling things out and putting tracks in and just really interacting with the audience there. And I think that was really showed you what that looked like. And it's just a better interview with more people at home watching. And it's not just that it's something new and different, it's better. And I would say it's not better incrementally, it's better exponentially. And the reason for that is, number one, is that the panel is 6 or 8 people that are technical production people talking is always going to be better than one person with a microphone. Like it's just, they're able to look at that and they have time to think, and they're because one person's asking questions, the other ones are building on it. And we had questions coming in from the online audience through Makana. And so we had people they are representing that. The second thing that I think is interesting is that they also are a better advocate of the online audience because they're looking through the same screen that the online audience is looking through. So if Courtney doesn't see something, then he can ask for it. I won't know that if I'm going back and forth there because I see it. So asking and pushing for something, you're seeing what everyone else is seeing, it's going to be very hard. We will still use the older way to do it when we don't have enough, when we have latency issues. but it's going to be really hard. It was an incredible experience anyway for me to look at how that was working. Next question.
Next one is from Brett. One sec. Talalik Lopez Waterman in San Jose, California. If each person on the panel who worked on the show would improve one thing about their own role contribution, what would it be? This is by no means meant to be negative, just interested in understanding what's on the list for you next year.
Go ahead. Sorry, Bill.
And that's all right. None of this is criticism of anything, because it's incredible what we were able to pull out, and it was because of incredibly talented people who volunteered their time. On the top of my list, I'm trying to do a little after-action report and figure a field producer who was on comms, who was just do a little bit more communication back with what's going next. A lot of this was, where are we going? What are we doing? It was really fascinating going to pitch this out in the field, and as I mentioned before, just to be able to say, you're just going live into a Zoom meeting and getting past that barrier. Some rules had to change a little bit. I don't know if many of you saw the Atlas thing at the beginning, but we have this process of hand the mic off to people, but sometimes they'll go a little rogue on you, and so you have to find a little buffer from that. So that's why that field production thing would be probably a little more important. I loved being able to just see something and go over there. On, I think, our day one coverage, the first thing I did was I was in one booth and I saw this weird thing on the floor. So to be able to spontaneously react and go over and talk to somebody and get them on board instantaneously, that was so cool. And I just have to quickly, before I stop talking, mention the camera op beasts that we had. Edwin, Tenzin, unbelievable work out there under extremely difficult, crowded show floor experiences. And those rigs were pretty heavy, and they just did an absolutely stunning job. So them, Brian, Mickey, Roz, the people in the background, what a team.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and as Alex described, a lot of the stuff we're doing here is bleeding edge stuff. We had Andy Carluccio, I think, in the booth setting up some of these new Zoom tools to demonstrate and to use in our Unreal Engine display. One weakness we found out, I think, in the first, those of us on the panel, in our arrangement, as you saw it there in the booth, there was no indication of, we didn't have a way to put titles in or to have an indication of who was talking. So the person in the booth had to kind of look around and see who was asking him a question, since we didn't have any kind of tally to indicate who was talking. But of course, since that was created on, I think, on day one of the show, or the day before the show, there's a little room for improvement there with a tally to indicate. And Alex showed, I didn't realize, I think the first day we had just the gallery input up of the panelists above the lens there, and so it was kind of difficult for the person to see who was talking there. And apparently that was alleviated by the addition of that additional was it Lilliput larger monitor.
Yeah, there were two things there. One is that well, we should probably move through this pretty quickly because we've got a lot of questions and not much time. But all I'll say is that it was the big thing that made a difference was the new 6.0 from Zoom, because it was highlighting people bigger when they talked, and that was something that probably made more of a difference in the monitor. In fact, the monitor might need to be smaller because the eye lines were better when the monitor was smaller, which I noticed when I reviewed it. So.
Yeah, and if you could put the person talking on the bottom and then the little gallery on the top, that would be great.
But we'll have we probably make this the one thing that Talalik asked for, because we've got a ton of questions. I suddenly looked at the clock and realized we're digging into it. So go ahead, Ronnie.
Well, one of the things that I've learned doing the panel this year is to actually treat this as a full day job. Being on the panel for 3 hours and even the morning meetings for 2 hours, and then you have a short break between those two, and being more able to prepare for everything that is going on and understand all the changes that are moving in the runner show. That is really important. So for me, just to be even more focused and don't have to do anything with my day job at all would be on my list for next year. But there is another thing on the list for next year, and that is I won't be on the panel. I will be on the floor in Las Vegas.
Very good. Go ahead, Jonas.
I want to decrease the latency of our WebRTC view by below 5 frames of latency. That was the big thing that we still had.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Edwin.
One big thing before going to Vegas, I was doing some. I specifically started to train just to have the body strength, just the arm strength, the back strength to be able to handle the camera the way I did. And so I feel like even doing a little bit more of that. And I think also battery management. I had met the guys from Core last year, and I was like, oh man, this battery technology is great, and what they're doing this year is phenomenal. And I think incorporating that into the future would really help alleviate a lot of the stresses we were having.
Go ahead, Jason.
I loved the spontaneity of being able to just simply go up and just, ask somebody spontaneously. For next year, I think it would be great to have, one freedom slot and then the other ones to know generally where we were going. So that would give us a chance to kind of warm them up a moment or two beforehand.
Yeah, and I think that when I was doing it, I was going ahead when things weren't happening. I was talking to people 20 minutes before I got there. So it was just a matter of, I was running out I didn't do it really kind of on the cuff very much. It may have looked that way, but I was usually running out during my downtime to do that. Yeah, go ahead, Adrian.
Yeah, I did a briefing document for the panel so that we knew who we had on the desk, and some talking points ended up being way too complex to follow during the thing.
Yeah, and I think that for me, the biggest thing is just logistics. I think we were drowning a little bit. The disadvantage we had this year was that we only knew for sure we had the booth a couple months before the show. We already have the next year booth. NAB's already given us that. So like that changes a lot. So our meetings, instead of starting in February for this one, our meetings will start in May, like next month. so as we start to plan it, because we know that we have a booth and we know we have those things. So that'll change a lot. But that'd be the one thing I change, is just increased logistics. Next question.
Peter Belbin in Houston, Texas asks, how are the likes of NAB, Sony, and Zoom measuring the success of what has been done, and whether they will want to continue to support it in a bigger way going forward?
Go, Jason.
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb and speculate. When Sony sent the entire camera team, and they were just kind of all around and talking to Alex, and one of the guys started looking at this camera rig and photographing it with this iPad Mini, and turned around the camera, and he's being extremely respectful. And I asked what he did for Sony, and he said, I built the FX6. Like, this was 2 years of my life. I think Sony sees and understands and appreciates the success that we've had. The Zoom CTO, I believe, stopped by the booth. Very, very, very supportive. So I think it's a win all the way around already.
The response is pretty positive. I don't like it. We'll see what happens. But I think
said understating.
It was pretty positive. So we needed this to kind of get us to the next level. We needed this to be, I expected it to be kind of a mess until Wednesday, and then it would almost work. And it was definitely a hard lift and didn't have enough logistics to it, but it was much cleaner from the outside than it looked on the inside. And I think that helped get us to a place where it's going to be much easier in the future. Next question.
Next one is from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. Conferences often have 3 or more tracks for attendees. Might we someday offer 3 tracks of NAB coverage?
Go ahead, Ronnie.
I'm pretty sure there will be more tracks, but there will also be needing a lot of more people. So being volunteers doing this, we need just a lot of more volunteers. And I'm pretty sure that the ideas of Alex and all the others will just fulfill your dreams.
A lot of times, I think that one of the things that, we limit what we do in a lot of places to volunteers. Again, officehours.global/volunteer. We limit how big and how many of these crews go out is very much dependent on how many people show up, how many people on the back end, how many people we do the best we can with what we have there. And so the more people that are involved, the better. These are opportunities also to be involved with one thing and not necessarily something ongoing. So it's ongoing because we work on it now for a year. But so I think that I think that 3 tracks would be the start. The next year, our goal is to do from start to finish. One track, starting at 9 a.m., going till 6 p.m. or whatever. And so we only did 3 hours because that was a huge, remember, we only did 1 or 2 hours total of the shows in the past. So instead, we did 3 hours a day, on this one. And that's a much different, but it allowed us to evolve too. The reason we did 3 hours was we do 3 hours, then we rest and lick our wounds and figure out what we could do better tomorrow, and then did it again. And that allowed us to iterate during the show to some degree so that we could get up to speed we could learn more from it. But next year, our goal is to do it all day and have all those bits and pieces in there to cover it. And I think that the year after that, if we continue to go down the path, would be to start to multiply. Now, I will say that we were so successful, there was a bunch of people that talked to us about wanting us to do 4 all-day tracks next year. And I don't know if that's possible, but they were definitely in the same boat. You can imagine having a panel, and this is, again, what we can do that with this new system, having a panel of audio engineers just doing the audio track and a panel of video folks just doing the video track. And the level of conversation that would happen there around the thing would be higher than anything we've ever seen. And so we're definitely interested in that process. What we probably will do next year is break it into hours. So there'll be like a 2-hour block that is the audio block. So we're going to all audio things, and we're going to have audio people, and then there's going to be a video block and a streaming block. And so we'll probably block it out that way rather than trying to do it all day in a certain one. So that's our first step towards that. But absolutely the goal is, I think you could do, with a lot more, 5 years from now, you could have 10 or 15 tracks that are all running that are covering different parts of things. Next question.
Rob Collins in Kansas City, Missouri asks, how did the team keep up with the roaming groups as they moved through the conference floor? I imagine phones didn't work, so what comms and tracking solution was used?
Good, Bill.
Actually, I had 2 on when I was on as a reporter. I was using Unity comms through an iPhone, and surprisingly, it was reasonably reliable. But due to back-end things, that and the IFBs that were coming that we had gotten from Lectrosonics, which we were using as program monitors some of the times, sometimes I was able to hear more clearly on one than the other. I was using an Apple AirPod Pro in one ear part of the time, and then that would come off, and my IFB would go in. And it just takes a lot of coordination. I imagine at some point the serious comms people will maybe help us out with some of the true PL kind of systems that allow us. It is very important to be able to hear the back end when you're live in the show floor because there's just so many variables that change all the time.
Next question.
Matthew LaCount in Oakland asks, what is the open rack case that holds the Constellation, HyperDecks, etc.?
SKB Open. I think it's SKB Open Rack, but it's SKB makes those, and we use them a lot. They're easier to ship. They're smaller to ship. They don't take G's as well as some of the bigger ones. You have to kind of pack stuff into them, especially if you build a cantilever kind of thing. You have to kind of fill it in. To make sure that things don't move around. But at the same time, they're really efficient to send and ship, especially when you're driving them. And they move a lot of air, so you don't have heat issues with your components because they're wide open. And it's easier to get to things. Next question.
Next question is from Peter Belbin in Houston, Texas. It seemed to me like for the panel-based segments that the guests did not always know where to look. I wonder if having a central box behind the camera that always shows the actively speaking panelist or small teleprompter might help.
Good, Bill.
On the main, I called it Frankenrig behind the scenes. That was the large one that we use on the central floor most of the time. People are just different. Some people are used to talking to a camera. The PR people are. When we got away from the PR people and we were in the more informal kind of circumstances with somebody, some of them did not know how to do that, and they looked around everywhere. To me, that's a little part of the show, the charm of this is not trying to be, it is trying to be professional, but it's also trying to be real. And the real, being able to get down to the real people in the booth who know about this stuff, even if they're not the most professional presenters, I thought was part of the charm of the show for me. I loved those people who didn't seem to be that polished.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of eyeline stuff that I think that we want to kind of think. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong. Yeah, no, that's right. I do think putting a central box back there, I think some version of a teleprompter with both of these having some kind of Interatron would make sense for that center one. figuring out exactly what that looks like is still something that, but one of the things that was suggested is putting that teleprompter in front of the camera and then having the rest of the panel around it, so you get to see who those other people are. So we are kind of thinking through that. A lot of my concern was mostly around with both the teleprompter on the camera as well as on the floating camera as well as the main camera was weight and light. So how does light hit the thing? Can you actually see it? Like, for instance, we absolutely know it won't work at Cinegear because it's all outside. so like, we're not going to even bother with that. So, we're still playing with those things. Next question.
Next question's from Paul Walhus in Austin, Texas. Alex, your interview rig is extremely effective and elaborate, but slightly overpowering. How could it be streamlined, downsized, and made less intimidating?
Well, number one is I can tell you that you may think it looks intimidating, but it got a lot of attention. And so the thing is that it actually achieved a goal that was also part of that, which is that people definitely paid attention when we showed up. And a lot of that, the size of that rig definitely made a difference. It was the biggest, most complex looking rig. Again, it will be more efficient as we go. I didn't have time to figure it out. And most importantly, I didn't have time to test it for heat and transmission and so on and so forth, which is why it got built out the way it got built out. When I have more time to look at it, it didn't fully run until we were there. I had most of the pieces running. I had most of the pieces working on those things, but the whole rig didn't turn on until the night before the show. And so I didn't have time to turn it on, leave it on. Is this going to overheat? Is this going to, is this going to be a problem? So those things were still things that we needed to, kind of figure out. So I definitely think that we want to downsize it and make it more, but it also did achieve we got a lot of attention for it, and it definitely, so it was very effective at that. In a place like NAB, if I was going to a different kind of conference, that would be too much. At a place like NAB, you have people following around taking pictures. So it's a different, two different cultures. But if we did it in a gardening show or in something else, we probably would try to build a smaller rig than what we built there. Next question.
Eric Stratton in Essex, Connecticut asks, if Vislink hadn't stepped up, would you have used Teradek? Or is there another brand that people are gravitating to?
Go ahead, Jason.
I've got to say I'm really impressed with Vislink. They actually sent someone to help us from South Hall, so I'm really glad that they did step up. I would say LiveView would be a second.
Well, LiveView we used, and of course LiveView solved a different problem, which is that it had a slightly higher latency. We actually found that I could interact relatively good. You could hear the latency thing with me and Grant because we just hadn't practiced it enough where we were handing off, so we were stepping on each other a little bit. And that gets much worse if you take it. You can't use it the way we use the Vislink because you can't have people who don't understand what's happening trying to interact with folks, and they won't understand the latency. So I got kind of a little bit into it as we got going. What this solved was zero latency to Zoom. If I was going to use something else, I'd use DJI. I think the DJI would probably be the one. Now we may use a Teradek, but DJI is probably the one that is the other transmission. It's not going to be the same as a Vislink. We were very fortunate to have the Vislink, and I have no idea how well it'll work in that kind of environment. But it's probably it's got some incredible range. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I agree that DJI is making incredible advances in the long distance video. What was that little box that was at the LiveView booth that was like $26,000 that takes the place of an entire LiveView? Could we have one of those next year?
Yeah, exactly. You mean the little box at Vislink?
Was it Vislink?
Yeah, Vislink had it.
It was like $26,000.
5G. It's a 5G transmission system, so it'll do 5G to the cloud. On a transmission. That's crazy. Yeah, I think it was only 10. I think it was only 10 grand. But
okay. Well,
but no,
for something this big, it was kind of pricey.
Expect us to, the Vislink was super supportive, and I think that they're interested in doing more. So expect us to experiment with some of the more exotic versions of what they have as we go forward. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, impressive back end. What specs were the Unreal Engine PC, and what specs were the bot machines? They look like rack-mounted Mac Minis.
All right, go ahead, Jason.
All right, Douglas, I'm going to blow your mind here. The specs on the machine, it was a little bit crowded there, but I'm going to zoom in on it, hopefully. Costco. That's what it was. The specs were Costco.
Technically, it wasn't Costco. it was B&H, but it was. So that was an i7 with a 4070, only 16 gigs of RAM. Nothing particular. About $1,800. So it was not a high performance. Nick Justison recommended it, and it worked well. I mean, we had a couple of backups for that, but it I think it did what it needed to do. The Mac Minis were 8 gig Mac Minis. I mean, they are M1 8 gig Mac Minis, nothing special, still running at 55% or something like that. Yeah, go ahead, Jonas.
And I just want to highlight how amazing it is, how well performed like that rig did. Normally, you would need like a couple render servers, so many Zoom-ISO or pin machines to make a virtual Zoom gallery like this work. We didn't like make it all fly around, but we could have. Like it really is amazing the tools that Zoom now has for us to build these immersive experiences.
And you can expect a lot more here. The reason I bought that computer, we were able to borrow some other stuff there, but the reason I bought that one is because I plan to become proficient in doing it in Unreal. And so Nick's going to be doing a lot more about it in our Tuesday sessions, and Nick and I are already talking about some labs, maybe with some special other guests that will dig into this and really perfect it. But I think that the Unreal opportunities are unreal. So there's just so many things we can do, especially as we look at it in combination with Avalanche and other things like that. I think that there's just a lot that we're going to be able to do with that pipeline. And so I felt like I needed to have that. I would probably get a bigger computer for production in the future, but for this, I think it was pretty good. Next question.
Next question is from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. Do you find smaller booths easier to work with? Did anyone say no to coverage?
Go, Bill.
It's all the same. We've leveled the playing field. I could go to a big booth and I got buy-in from CEOs and people who were in charge or the founder of the company. We went to small booths. And as soon as you said the words, it's just a Zoom call, and I'd had Edwin turn the camera around and we'd show them this is a panel in Zoom and you're going to be part of it and you will have a microphone and you can just talk as if you were at your desk talking to Zoom. All the resistance went away. As to anyone say no, yes, one booth said no, and I think they were idiots because it would have been great for them, but they couldn't get out of their corporate mindset and find the right people to approve everything. So sorry, guys.
Yeah, and there's this back and forth between, we want to schedule everybody ahead of time, but at the same time, we also need to be able to be spontaneous. And so I think that we had a little bit of both of those things that were going on. What we did is the wireless ones were more spontaneous, and the live view and the table were all scheduled. And so so there's a little bit of both of those things that are there. I think that we'll continue to do it. What will happen, I believe, again, we're kind of been told to like find where we want to be next year. I mean, there's a lot of all the doors are open now, and so I think people may say they don't want to do it 1 year, but they won't do it 2 years in a row. As we go down. I mean, I always say the first is the worst, and this was the worst it's going to be, and it was still, I'll still argue, the best coverage that we've seen at NAB, ever live. And I've done live coverage from NAB for 20 years. And so the team just did an amazing job. And I think that as we continue to go down this path with more of these booths and more of these shows, and by the time we get back to NAB, we will have done 5 or 6 other ones. The level at which we're doing it at, I think that people see what other people are getting, and they're not getting it because they said no. Someone's going to get a phone call from somebody in marketing going, why aren't we on this show? So next question.
Next one is from Robert Shoji in Los Angeles. Terrific NAB coverage. Thank you. Where can we make a small donation to your efforts?
It would be very appreciative. we would appreciate some support. We definitely spent a fair bit. I spent a fair bit on backing it up, and then we've had some great donations. But I don't think we're quite out of the hole. If you can go to officehours.global/donate. And that would really help a lot, for us to do it. We'd really appreciate that. Thanks. Next question.
Brandon Buttram in Indianapolis, Indiana asks, what take-home lessons do you think these vendors learned after being interviewed on our show?
Go, Jason.
When you see an Office Hours team, be ready and look interesting.
I think that almost all the vendors did a pretty good job. I think that this is a new thing. They hadn't seen it before. And almost all of them took a moment to get good at it and then just kind of leaned into it. And I think it became, I've done this in the past where we've had audio. It is completely different to have the video screen there. Like it is, like we've done audio returns and you're just talking to a camera and you're hearing it. It's not the same. Not the same. I can tell you the reason people don't do it is because they didn't do the video returns, because they'd see it and they were like, it's okay. And this is entirely different thing. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
This is an incredibly target-rich environment for this because these are demo people in booths. They've been trained to talk to people all day long and be concise and get the important parts of their product out, which is exactly what we want to hear. And even the people who are not demo people per se, the corporate, the president of the company or whatever, they know how to talk about their product. And as soon as they get into this conversation, they've been having these conversations with vendors and teammates and everybody. They're just really good at it. So I was incredibly impressed with how articulate and how well almost everyone did. We had a couple of little weird things, but that's part of the learning too. I mean, how to manage that live interaction in the field. It was fascinating.
And I mentioned it in passing, but the GPU, by the way, it was a 4070. There's some discussion there. 4070 is what was built into that PC. Next question.
Next one from Paul Walhus in Austin, Texas. NAB, Cinegear, Sissgraph are great. How can we effectively, as individuals or small teams, cover other regional events like the ACL Festival, South by Southwest, etc., with less fanfare but still serve our community?
We're still figuring that out. I mean, the mistake that I'll be honest, I always experiment with a high-end version and then go down to the low-end version. If you start with the low-end version, you pour concrete in the wrong places. So I don't tend to experiment with a little version. This was the $200,000 version, and I do think that there's an opportunity to build it into something smaller. I don't know what that opportunity is yet, and we definitely think that there's a lot of festival opportunities. There are versions of this that we've talked about since we did it that we think that we could do it without the booth. So the booth is really powerful, but we could theoretically have the panelists off-site and a mobile rig and just a place to put the transmitters, and we could cover an event, effectively as well. We just have to swap people out in and out or do shorter whatever. That what made a difference having the booth was Edwin could take a break. So anyway, so that was another piece of that. But I think that and we're interested. And again, a lot of it has to do with festivals being open to us working on it. There's a lot of them where we make requests and festivals ignore us, or don't give us any space to work. And one of the things that they'll have to do is give us a space. Like we have to have some kind of space there. And so if they're not willing to give us a space, then I'm not really interested. Like at that point, I mean. Cinegear, I don't want the space because I don't want to be outside. So that's a different one. But if I can't find a space, and I'm not given something to work with, and I feel like we're doing a huge service to these to the events, so they'll either figure it out or we won't cover them. Next question.
Next one's from me. Alex, did Smallrig see our rig?
I went over early and showed it to them, and they just didn't. I thought that they'd be more excited about it, and they just were. I asked them if they had any input, and they were like pretty much everything that I did. They were kind of like, yeah, that's about what we would do. There wasn't a whole lot of like suggestions on how to change it, other than we talked about putting a dovetail onto the tripod. So that we could slide it forward and back a little bit more effectively. So we're thinking about, that was the only thing he pointed out. And the person we talked to actually didn't suggest the Smallrig dovetail. I guess he's a freelancer or something like that. He's like, he gave us some other dovetails that he thought might work better. So anyway, which is good. I thought that was an honest answer. Next question.
Brandon Buttram in Indianapolis, Indiana. I just wanted to shout out to our booth neighbors, especially Riptie. They were always there for us when we needed them.
Yeah, we were a big presence at the space. I felt a little bad for everyone around us because there was just so much movement around our space. I think NAB kept on saying, you got to make sure there's people at the booth. There's got to be people at the booth. And I was like, oh, there'll be people at the booth. And there was probably 10 to 20 people there most of the time just milling around that booth because of all of our volunteers, but also just people coming by to see it. There were definitely a large number of people. People were running up to me, saying hi and how much they love this show. and how excited they were that we were there. All like probably every half hour at least, if not more. So it was a lot of fun to be there. I think we had a good week from a production perspective. I think that the next steps will be to codify it, and again, we're going to be. I will let everyone know that you'll start to see announcements for the upcoming shows. We weren't sure that we'd be able to make it with donations. I think we're going to be able to do Cinegear. So it'll be a much simpler show. It's just going to be a single camera live view HD. But what we're going to focus on is the live view with HDR 5.1 4K. That's all we're going to do. So that's what Cinegear, because it's outside. So we're going to focus on that. But you'll see that. You'll see an announcement for Sissgraph. You'll see an announcement for the NAB teams. All of those things are going to start. Those announcements will all go out probably next week. As we start to plan these, the teams will start to collate much faster. We're going to start building more complex and larger teams. I think we were searching for something and we found it, and we found it because all of us were looking together. This is really our project, and I think that people did an incredible job. I just want to thank again. I don't have all the people on a list here in front of me. I should, but the backend team did an amazing job. The technical core team, John Wallace and Mickey Makachor and JJ did an incredible job on the back end. Shuffling things around and making things happen. All the organizational, the Brian Shand and many others did an incredible job of making that work. And of course, the incredible work that was done by the team on the ground, really was amazing. And it was and we did something that I will still argue, while not perfect in many places, couldn't be done by somebody else. Like that level of complexity doesn't happen at conferences, without enormous budgets, and so it was really to be able to innovate this really took a village, and I just want to thank everybody for that. And I'd like to, thank all of our panelists for today, hanging out with us. I don't remember what to say. I haven't been here for a week. So I also want to thank everybody who filled in while we were all gone. A lot of us were gone, and everyone kind of stepped in and kept the show going. Still haven't missed one, and it's all your fault by keeping it going. So thank you so much for everyone who stayed at home and made that happen. And made sure that we had these shows coming together day after day after day. Thank you to the producers who keep on asking all the great questions and keeping the conversation moving forward. And thanks to the incredible team every single day that makes this show happen. We really appreciate all of your contributions. Today we traveled 67,000 miles. That's 109,000 kilometers. And that is 534 million bananas per scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours.
What really got me is how many people walked up to me and said, your answers, let me show you what I did. And that kind of reach just blew my mind. I'm sure I'm not the only one that got that.
I had the same experience. It was so sweet when people came up to us on the show floor. Yeah. They were just so nice.
Yeah, we had a good.
It's just what we do with the next one. We got to get these Vislink Dragonfly 5s.
Yeah, no, I'm in.
Size for credit card stuck in that.
They're probably having a lot of the dragonflies. They probably have a lot of the dragonflies after the Olympics is in France. So
exactly.
We can get a lot of
bunch
of them for IBC.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. IBC might be a good one for that.
Exactly.
All right. See you.